This happened several summers ago. When I was still living in my childhood home with my parents, I was 17 one random weekends. My parents went away for a few days without taking me with them, which was pretty much unheard of. They're the kind of people who are always at home, constantly keeping the house in order and rarely ever taking time away for themselves. In all my years living there, I couldn't remember a single time they'd ever gone away together like that naturally. I decided to take advantage of the rare opportunity, and I invited over MJ, my girlfriend at the time, to spend the weekend. It felt like a once-in-a-lifetime chance to have the house to myself, without any interruptions. MJ had this playful, devious side to her that made every moment feel a little more exciting than it should have been, admittedly. That's one of the reasons why we didn't work out. But I'm not going to open that can of worms right now. Knowing her, I should have been able to predict what was going to happen that night. As soon as she saw my heated pool glowing away in the backyard, her eyes lit up with a spark of mischief. She told me we should skinny dip, grinning like it was the most obvious idea in the world. I told her my neighbors would see, but she pestered me and made the very good point that we'd probably never get the chance. Again, we had gone swimming many times, but had never done something that devious before. At least I hadn't. I was always the well-behaved, polite kid growing up. Even now, I sometimes scolded myself for being too nice anyway. It took a lot of convincing for me to agree, but MJ had a way about her. Her enthusiasm was contagious, and before long, we were in the pool laughing and splashing under the night sky. It was actually a really romantic moment. As cheesy as that sounds, the water was warm against the cool summer air, and everything felt perfect. Almost surreal. Let me quickly describe the house. The pool was right outside. The large bay windows that overlooked the living room. Because it was so dark outside and the lights inside were still on, we had a perfect view into the house. It was like looking into a lit-up dollhouse. I'm sorry if that doesn't make sense, but if you saw a picture, you'd get what I'm talking about. For a while, that view made me feel safe, like we were still connected to the house, even while we floated outside in our own little bubble. That comfort didn't last long, though. At one point, as MJ was talking about something, I don't even remember what, I glanced up at the windows and froze. I saw the last thing I expected to see on one of the far living room walls was a shadow. It was faint, but distinct, and I knew it was definitely a shadow because of how it was moving. I watched in horror as it moved out of sight, like someone was walking deeper into the house. My heart started pounding. I felt a surge of panic, but I didn't want to scare MJ. I whispered to her that we needed to get out of the pool. She didn't question me. She just quickly followed my lead, as I tried to get out of the pool and dry off as discreetly as possible. I told MJ to hide in the pool house, turn off the light, and stay completely silent until I came back. Her playful demeanor was completely gone. I could tell she was freaking out, but she was doing a really good job keeping it together. She nodded and slipped into the pool house without another word. I opened the back door as quietly as I could and stepped into the kitchen. I was going to handle the situation myself. That's just how my parents had raised me. I grabbed a knife off one of the cutting boards and started moving through the house. Someone had definitely been in there. That much was obvious. I started noticing small, subtle signs that didn't make any sense to me. A chair in the dining room was slightly pulled out, like someone had been sitting there. A picture frame on the wall was crooked. A coffee mug I didn't remember using was sitting on the counter. Stuff like that. Stuff that no rational robber would ever waste time doing. As I moved through the house, I started considering the possibility that it wasn't a robber. I was looking for my heart rate must have been insane at that point. I thought I was going to be tackled every 5 seconds, but nothing ever happened. I checked every room on the ground floor, but I didn't find anyone. All the doors were locked, and all the windows were shut tight. It didn't make any sense if someone had been inside. Where were they now? The more I wandered around the house, the more my masculine bravado disappeared. At one point, I just got fed up and decided to call the police. They arrived quickly and did a thorough search of the house and yard, but they didn't find anything either. No signs of forced entry, no footprints in the backyard, nothing. They couldn't even come up with a legitimate method of entry. One of the officers suggested I might have scared off whoever it was, but I wasn't convinced. At a certain point, it was too late at night to do much else. The police left MJ, and I were too scared to stay in the house. But we didn't have another option. We locked every door, barricaded the bedroom, and tried to get some sleep. Around 4 a.m., I woke up to the sound of creaking floorboards above me. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but the noise was way too obvious. Someone was moving upstairs. One listened for a while longer and started hearing footsteps moving down the stairs, like whoever it was trying to make their way outside. Adrenaline surged through me. As I grabbed the knife I'd left on the nightstand, I told MJ to stay put and bolted out of the room. I moved as quickly and as quietly as I could, but by the time I reached the front door, it was wide open. Whoever had been inside was gone. I didn't even bother calling the police again. There was nothing they'd be able to do anyway. Just made sure all the doors were locked and went back to bed. The next morning, the full extent of the intrusion hit me. All of our kitchen knives were missing. All of them. Which was definitely not something a rational person would do. They'd also taken smaller items. Some cash, a few watches, random electronics, but it was the knives that haunted me. It felt like whoever had been inside had left a message, though I couldn't figure out what it was. When my parents came home and I told them what happened, they were surprisingly understanding. I'm not one to scare easily, never have been so. This experience honestly didn't affect me much. But even now, I still sometimes acknowledge how strange it all was. I was never able to figure out how that person had gotten inside, or where they had been hiding while the police searched the house. This is always going to be one of those odd things that just sticks with a person forever. This happened last year during Hollywood Bash weekends. I go to Rowan University, and for anyone who doesn't know, Hollybush is Rowan's big spring festival. Kind of like our own mini Coachella. It's held every April on Hollybush Green. Right near the historic Hollybush Mansion, there are carnival rides, food trucks, lawn games, and a concert with a surprise headliner. The whole campus shows up. It's supposed to be the most fun day of the year. I was a sophomore at the time, and like a lot of other students, I stayed out late that night. Rowan's in a pretty quiet suburban neighborhood. Glassboro doesn't really feel dangerous even at 2 in the morning. That's probably why I didn't think much of it when I left my friend's dorm and started walking back to Chestnut Hall alone. What I didn't know was that earlier in the night, around 12 a.m., a group of masked people, like 10 of them, maybe more, had been seen banging on doors and riding bikes around campus, including outside Chestnut. I personally never saw that firsthand, but apparently it was alarming enough that people were posting about it online. While it was happening, I didn't check any of that stuff. I was just trying to get back to my dorm. So it's about 2 a.m., I swipe into Chestnut Hall, go inside, and I'm walking towards the stairs, when I notice someone sitting in the lounge. That alone isn't weird, it's a college dorm. People are up all the time, but the guy was wearing a mask. Not a COVID mask, like a full-on black ski mask. And he wasn't doing anything. Just sitting there dead silent. It took me a second to process. I actually paused near the entrance of the lounge. Kind of frozen, it didn't make sense. I had no idea what he was doing there or why he was masked. But it genuinely freaked me out. And then he jumped off the couch and turned towards me. In one quick motion, I didn't even think. I ran down the hall and ducked into the nearest bathroom. Locking the door behind me, I must have stayed in there for at least 5 minutes, long enough to hear the hallway go completely silent again. I didn't want to seem paranoid, but my gut was screaming at me. Eventually, I cracked the door open and peeked out. No one was in the hall. I thought maybe he had left. I stepped out. I didn't want to sprint and freak myself out even more, so I just walked toward the other exit. That's when I saw him again. He was still in the lounge, still masked. And this time, he was directly across from where I had to walk. His bike was leaned against the door, and there was a chair wedged between the wall and the frame, like it had been jammed there on purpose. I had pepper spray on my keychain. I pulled it out and held it in front of me. I didn't aim or threaten him. I just showed that I had it, hoping it would be enough. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I walked past him. He didn't try to stop me. He didn't even flinch. It was like he wanted me to see him. Like the fear was the whole point. I didn't look back. I pushed the other door open and left the building. I was halfway to Magnolia when I heard the sound of bikes behind me. 3 more masked people rode up next to me. They didn't touch me or try to grab me, but they were heckling me, laughing, saying things I couldn't make out. I know that sounds pretty harmless on its own, but a few of them were waving around what looked like guns, which was the part that freaked me out the most. Guess they could have been fake or airsoft guns even, but it was clear that they were trying to intimidate me. I tried to ignore them, but I could feel how close they were riding. Just barely out of arm's reach, I made it to Magnolia and texted my friend to come meet me outside. He walked me back to Chestnut, and that made me feel a lot safer. Luckily, the bikers were gone by then. I didn't call the police that night. I wasn't hurt, but I was really scared. I can't even fully explain why. It wasn't until the next morning that I told my mom everything. She ended up reporting it. And later that night, some of my guy friends texted me that they had also been approached by a group of masked guys, and a few of them had pulled guns. Nobody was hurt, but it was enough that campus police started taking it seriously. I've heard a lot of rumors about who those guys were. Some people think it was just a bunch of local kids trying to scare people. It's just the gun detail that freaks me out. It's likely that a group of armed non-students had somehow made their way into my dorm that night. The place I live, I've been scared to walk home alone ever since. This happened in 2016, when I was a 17-year-old first-year college student in film school. I'm now 22 female, and my name is Julia. I lived alone in my first ever apartment. It was really small, but I was really proud of my independence. I never felt unsafe in this apartment for several reasons. There were multiple gates in the residence that needed to be opened through a code. Only the people who lived there knew. My door had 3 different locks, and it was right next to the university. So, most of the people who live in the neighborhood were college students. Nothing bad had ever happened in the neighborhood before. I've always been very careful with locking the door. When I leave my home, I always check twice. I have slight OCD. So this one time, I left to go to class and locked my door. For some reason, I couldn't get the key out of the lock. It was completely stuck. So when I went to get the caretaker of the building to help me, but he wasn't there, and I was getting late for class. I went to class with the key still on the lock. I took off the keychain first so it wasn't too noticeable. When I got home, the caretaker was back, so he came to help me, and we couldn't get it up for 15 minutes until somehow he did. He told me the lock was damaged, but that I didn't necessarily need to change it. If I only locked it once instead of twice, I just said okay, and that was the end of it. I really wasn't worried because of how safe I felt in this building. Fast forward to 2 months later, I was taking out the trash one night around 11 p.m. and while on the phone with my sister, I remember telling her that I was taking out the trash and that I would take a shower afterwards before heading to a party. As I previously said, I always lock the door, even just to take out the trash. Because of my lock being damaged, I only locked it once. When I got back to my apartment, I found the door unlocked, which immediately alarmed me. So I went into the apartment and locked the door immediately. With 3 different types of locks, when you walk into my apartment, which is just 215 square feet, you have the main room in front of you and the bathroom door immediately to your left. I had left the bathroom door slightly open, enough so I could see a man in my shower turning his back to me. Naturally, when I saw this, I tried to open the door and leave as fast as possible. Except my main lock was damaged from 2 months earlier, and I couldn't open it no matter how hard I tried. In this moment, all I could think of was the fact that I had to leave as fast as possible. I jumped out the window without really thinking. I figured it was the only solution, except I live on the 2nd floor. So I completely smashed my ankles in the landing. I started running in whichever way I could. When I got a little bit further from the building, I looked back and a man was there at my window watching me run away. I thought of 2 possible outcomes. Either the man was going to jump and chase me, and I wouldn't get far with my twisted ankles, or he would get scared of the height and be locked in my apartment. Thankfully, he picked option 2. I went to hide in a bush a little further and called the police, who arrived in just 10 minutes because I live close to the station. I pushed my door open, and the man was just sitting there on my couch, holding a kitchen knife waiting for me to come back, like he didn't think I would call the police. They arrested the guy. They also told me how everything had happened. Like I said, it was a very friendly neighborhood with mostly college students, so he got inside the building by other people holding the door for him. He then heard me telling my sister I was going to take a shower, which was why he was waiting in the bathroom for me. He crocheted my lock while I was taking out the trash. He apparently noticed me on the school campus and followed me to my home several times before succeeding in actually coming in. He stayed inside waiting because I had recently changed my phone, and the previous one was still on the table. So he thought I didn't have a phone with me to call the police. I don't live there anymore, but after that, to get into the building, we all needed identification proving we lived there. Building IDs were created and we had to scan them every time, and it was the only way to go inside. Nothing bad happened in the neighborhood after that. It's back to being very peaceful and friendly.